Hey everyone, and welcome to Read This Now, the weekly webcast where Brad Gustafson and I share two books that we love and we think you should read when, Brad?
Got to read them right now.
Right now.
Yes.
Well, Happy New Year.
Emphasis on right now.
That's right. Well, Happy New Year, my friend. You've been reading
You too. Thanks, Jen. I think I picked the perfect book for the new year, although I could be wrong, but to me
wow. Well, I'm excited to hear about it. It was hard for me to pick a book today. So I'm in the sense that I felt like I had a lot of options. So
nice.
Okay,
Ooh.
so go for it. I can't wait to hear what you've been reading.
All right. I can't wait to hear. It's always fun when you have lots of options. And then that means you probably went to a really good one, right?
I hope so.
Yeah. So I wanted to share a book, and to give a teeny bit of context, our school used this book in conjunction with a community project where people were able to donate gift cards just to share the love and help one another kind of around the winter season. But we wanted to have a theme that we felt was super inclusive and not tied to any particular holiday or religion, because we wanted to spread the love for everyone.
Sure.
So the book is called The Giving Snowman, and so we had a giving snowman out in the lobby, and then of course we had the literacy tie-in where families wanted to check out. We had extra copy of these on hand so they could make it kind of an experience to donate and just talk about it, what connected to the story. But the purpose of this show is to talk about the book. So this is The Giving Snowman, written by Zheng, illustrated by Graziella, Miligi. I need to go back and practice that pronunciation or research it. I didn't do that ahead of the show. The premise of the book is the snowman kind of selflessly gives to different characters in the book, and then it boomerangs back when the snowman needs help at the end of the story. Everyone the snowman had touched was more than happy to help the snowman. But like I said, I just love the book because probably it has like a community and kid and real person connection here, above and beyond being a heartwarming story. I just love seeing how our staff and families use the book just to rally together. So that's my book, The Giving Snowman. I would recommend it. I could see lots of cool things, although ours kind of focused on gift cards. I could see, obviously you can give smiles, you can give compliments, you can give time. I could see kids in classrooms or even families using this in different ways as well. So
I love that. That's so sweet. Will you show us a page from it?
Oh yeah, why didn't I think of that? See, Jen, you are so great.
This is why we make a good team.
Yeah, the pages are so different, which probably makes them immersive, but it was published in 2021, so it's a newer title, but it has kind of a timeless feel where you look at the pages and the art, and I don't know what medium or if it was mixed medium, but it just feels kind of timeless.
I love
that. So even like the snowy woods on that quadrant, I don't know if you can see the depth there, and this one's broken up, and then other pages are whole spread, if that's the right word. But there's lots of texture, and just it's like literally a feel-good read where I could see the conversations and people you're reading with and alongside are just as meaningful as the text itself. So it's one of those books that feels pretty versatile.
Oh, I love that. That's neat. I always love it when I get to learn about a new picture book that I hadn't heard of before. So that's great. I get to put it on my list to check out.
Awesome. So what do you got, Jen?
Well, I've been talking to a couple of people recently over the break about how, the transition from one year to another is wonderful. I mean, how lucky that we get to have another year, like it's every year is a gift, right? So, but one of the things that like is such a silly stressor, but causes me stress but like good kind of stress, not a really, I don't want anybody to feel like I'm anxious or anything like that, but is at the turn of the year, I always think, oh gosh, do I need to start reading these 2023 or the new year books that are in the new year, or should I try to make sure I read some of those books from the end of last year that I didn't get to? Like, it's like prioritizing, because I always feel, and it's a pressure I put on myself, but to be sort of up to date about what's being published, right?
Hey, Jen, a quick connection. I have the same exact thing, because even like, I don't always know when books are published, but that's why I was able to say this is from 2021, because I was kind of reflecting on what world I wanted to live in and read out of. So
yes, I know, I do the same thing, and it's such a good problem to have, right? But usually I very much lean towards reading whatever is new, because I really just want to make sure I have new stuff to recommend to folks. But this year I was like, no, there are some books that have been on my shelf for a long time that I really want to read and make sure that I do. And I'm so glad that I did, because I really read some incredible books like in over the last few weeks. Like, I just feel like I would have really missed out if I hadn't, made sure I got some of those 2022 titles in. And the one that I'm going to share today is one of those books. And it's kind of an unusual book for me too, because it's nonfiction. I don't usually share a lot of nonfiction. And I don't know why that is, but I keep telling myself I'm going to read more of that. And so maybe this will be the year that I actually do it. It's a book called Seen and Unseen. And I want to read the subtitle. It's What Dorothea Lange, Toyo Miyatake, and Ansel Adams' photographs reveal about the Japanese American incarceration. So it's a book that is all about the period of time right after the attack on Pearl Harbor, when President Roosevelt signed the order stating that Japanese, Asian, and then even other nationalities, but Japanese primarily, Americans were going to be sent to camps around the country, okay, and incarcerated for an extended period of time. I've read other books about this topic before. Over the last few years, there have been several great graphic novels that have been published about this. It's an interesting time period that now is approaching almost, it's hard for me to say this, almost 100 years ago. So it's something that, is very far away in the minds of our students, and yet an important time of history for us to know. And I was interested in this book because I thought that it was going to be primarily photographs. And there's lots of photographs in the book, but I ended up being sort of astounded because it was, like you were talking about before, this book that's full of mixed media. So I want to share a little bit about the book. I want to make sure I mention that the author and illustrator are Elizabeth Partridge and Lauren Tamaki, first of all. But I'm going to pull a Mr. Shoe, and I'm going to take off the dust jacket first to reveal the case cover, which gives you kind of a hint of what we're going to see inside. And then, Brad, before I go any further, I'm going to have a question for you at the end, because I've been thinking about what ages I think this book is right for. And so I'm going to ask you to chime in on that, okay? Then when we open up the cover to look at the end papers, you can see that there's an illustrated map, which is of all the camps in the US that Japanese Americans were interned in, right? This book focuses primarily on this camp right here, on Manzanar, which was in Eastern California. That being said, the book, it wraps around, is about really these three photographers who were hired by different groups. Well, two of them were hired. I'll tell you about the third one in a minute, to photograph what was going on in the camps. The first was Dorothea Lange, who was hired by the U.S. government to document what was happening in the camps. She was staunchly against the law, against the program itself. So she went in to that job sort of with the agenda of trying to humanize the Japanese Americans who were there, so that other Americans would be able to see that these are humans and fellow Americans who we've sent to the camps. But her photographs are such a beautiful example of how this book is mixed media, because in between the photographs are these gorgeous illustrations, like this one here, where the text talks about how families were rounded up and sent off to the camp, not having any idea whether or not they'd ever see their homes again. And then those are juxtaposed later with the actual photographs. So you can see, the illustrations taking us on the narrative to then the place where these people land, so that the photographs aren't just, they're out of context. The photographs have these beautiful illustrations and text in the context. So then the next photographer who is mentioned in the book, which I think is so neat. Oh, I want to show you this other page too, Brad, that shows you how the illustrations are like mixed with the photographs that Dorothea Lange took. So neat the way it's done. But then the next photographer, who I had never heard of before, I'd heard of Dorothea Lange, but had never heard of, let me make sure I get this name right here. It is Toyo Miyatake. He was actually a Japanese American who was a photographer who was imprisoned in the Mazinar camp. And he, with friends, worked to sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Have parts to cameras brought in to the camp so that he could fashion his own camera, which he and his friends created to look like his lunchbox. And here's like all the parts, the illustrations, but this is the actual camera that he made. And then he took photographs while he was imprisoned in the camp. And we learn all about the rules and stuff that he had to follow. And then the last photographer, who lots of people have heard of, Ansel Adams, who's known for like these beautiful landscape photographs that he did. He primarily, sort of different from what he's known for, took portraits while he was there. And he was actually hired by the manager of the camp itself to come in and document what was going on there. But he was so moved by the people there, he wanted to take portraits of the people again, so that he could share it more widely outside of the camp, so that people could know who the human beings were who were being incarcerated there. So it is such a neat book, the way it's done. The text is sort of, you can see there's like sort of sparse text interspersed between the photographs and the illustrations. But I felt like it takes this a complex topic that for some kids may be hard to understand, how we in this country would have rounded up our own citizens and sent them to camps for years, some of them many, many years, during this time in our history, while also telling the story of how these photographers did their work to try to share the story of what was happening there in different avenues. It's really, really neat. And so I've been struggling to think about like what the age group is for this. I mean, I think it could go, I feel like as an adult, I learned so much and was really moved by the book. So in terms of the cap for how old a reader might be, it could go forever as far as I'm concerned. But in terms of young kids, I felt like probably some fifth graders could digest this book. But I wondered, you're the elementary school expert in our group, what you thought.
Yeah, well, I have some expertise, which is different than being an expert. I wondered a couple things. I wondered if that book could pair with when a class might be studying the war, for example.
Yes.
That'd be a tie-in, and then a person could select parts or all of it. It might lend itself well to a lesson on photography, or even we have some at the elementary school, some then and now curriculum where we compare different technologies, and just to humanize that that aspect of it. And then also the other wonderment I had is, even if a kiddo might not be, developmentally ready for that, and independently, doing it as a read aloud and scaffolded by the teacher with conversation and stuff could really be a game changer. And then of course, Jen, and this is all stuff too, like if a kiddo is interested in it, then generally their readiness for the book level increases anyway. So all of that to say, Jen, I don't know the exact grade that I would recommend it for, but I would just keep my eyes and ears open depending on the needs of the individual readers, teachers' passions, any curricular overlays, things like that. Sometimes kiddos, like we recently had a kiddo ask for books from a certain culture. She wanted to see herself more in books and just wanted to read and have access to those. So that'd be another perfect example of if that fit the bill, like bringing it into a class and celebrating it that way.
One of the things that nonfiction text tends to do so well is pairing short snippets of text that sometimes has some unfamiliar vocabulary in them because it's nonfiction. You're getting all of this new knowledge with all of these contextual image, whether they're photographs or illustrations, etc. And I just felt like this book did such an interesting job of that by mixing the photographs with the illustrations. And I don't know, I really loved it. I also thought, as you were talking, one of the things that might make this book accessible to younger kids is that while there's a complete arc, it tells the story of these camps from start to finish. We start the book where the order is signed by President Roosevelt to create the camps, and then the book ends when that order is reversed, when the law is changed and people are released. So we have a complete arc, but really you could kind of open it up to maybe not any page, but any section about a particular photographer, and just take it in those small sections and get a complete story in and of itself, sort of. So anyway, I want to cover one last time, just for those folks who may have missed the title, Seen and Unseen, what Dorothy Lange, Toyo Miyatake, and Ansel Adams photographs reveal about the Japanese American incarceration. I just thought it was so great, and I hope that you read it right now.
Really great share. On one level, the art, and when you shared several of the pages, but one in particular where it was the photos interspersed with the art, that was really powerful, because you could almost, the illustrations came alive for me. I can't explain it, but you could picture like the young woman swinging the baseball bat, because it was right next to a photo. It just felt, I had more of a connection than I've ever had before with an illustration, but it made me think of, in an elementary school, just even using that above and beyond the story and the content, just to model the power of mixed media. But then even like as a writing unit, you could share, like you just said, aspects of the story, and then have kids try to kind of communicate in the same way.
That particular scene, just really quick, was powerful to me because it's all about how there's a subtitle in the section that reads something like, how do you make a home out of a prison? Because the adults there's lots of children in the camps, and so they wanted to give their kids as normal of an upbringing, an experience as possible. So some of the things that they did ranged from making sure that they did everything they could to cook traditional meals so that their kids wouldn't forget their heritage, to having baseball teams like you mentioned. And I remember that page, I bookmarked it because there's like the photograph of these folks playing baseball, and then you have the illustrations of people trying to build that for their kids. It's really a powerful scene, I thought.
Cool. Well, Jenn, I'm so glad that you went back. You dipped way back into 2022.
I know, way back to October when this was
powerful share. And I haven't read the Rover. What was that book again? The Rover's Landing.
Rover Story. A Rover
Haven't
Story.
read it yet, but it's been imprinted on my mind that I need to. But I was in a Principals Clubhouse through Bookalicious Zoom meeting.
Yes.
Or whatever gathering. Yes. And Jasmine, is it Warga, she was in it, who wrote that book, and oh my gosh, so it just reminded me on the read this now. I gotta get to that book.
You do. You won't regret it. And I'm guessing our 3.5 viewers who have read it would confirm that you will not regret it. I was telling someone the other day, and this show's getting so long, I know we had to stop. I said that, when I read, I feel like my heart is made up of different bookshelves, and when I read, I find myself, these books of the heart, I find myself putting on other people's shelves in my heart. And I have a shelf in my heart for Brad Gustafson. And so when I read and I'm like, oh, this is a book of my heart, but it's got to go on Brad's shelf, I put it there. And that book is on your shelf, my friend. So I'm anxiously awaiting for when, no pressure, but I'm anxiously awaiting for when
you're an incredible curator, because I trust my shelf with you, because you've never steered me astray. If people are looking for other books that Jenn has recommended, maybe for your heart.
Yes, I love that transition.
Go to bit.ly/read underscore this underscore now for a really nicely organized year by year list of all the books that Jen and I think you should read right now. And the spreadsheet has been updated, so you'll have to tab
Yes,
down to look at yesteryear's books, and
that's right.
this year's books will be right at the top, front and center.
That's exactly right. Yay, friend. I'm so glad we're connecting in 2023 and look forward to lots of reading over the next 52 weeks with you and with our 3.5 viewers. Until then, happy reading, everyone.
Love it. See ya.